Wow, this is really cool. Jack's voice was barely above a whisper as he sat on his bed. Knight was in front of him, using a single grain of black sand to create more. He watched as the sand multiplied and transformed into simple creatures. A small black dolphin swam in the air, followed by a bird that looked almost like Baby Tooth. Baby Tooth fluttered to her doppelganger, eyeing it critically before nodding in approval seconds later. It resembled her perfectly, right down to the small scar underneath her right wing. "Am I able to do this too?" he asked. The horse nodded as the sand creatures returned to their original forms and swirled around Jack's hand in innocent curiosity. The black sand grazed the tip of his fingers in silent greeting. "Yes," she said, "creating nightmare sand out of a single grain is a bit tricky. It takes quite a bit of focus and control, but controlling and manipulating it should be fairly simple for you. It's the same when you create your snowflakes, master." Jack gazed at the sand, watching Baby Tooth as she attempted to touch the sand that floated above his palm. "Just like my snowflakes?" He frowned at the thought. "I don't understand. How is that even possible? I don't know a thing about creating black sand or moving it." It didn't take long for him to make a snowflake. There was no limit to his creativity, rather big or small, shiny or somewhat dull. Each snowflake was created with a spark of joy and fun, but of course, each one was special and different from one another. No two were ever identical. He smiled as frost magic swirled around his fingertips, creating a bright, shiny snowflake. Baby Tooth chirped in excitement as she gazed at the flake in awe. The snowflake danced around the little fairy before dispersing into swirls of winter magic. Most spirits see the creation of snowflakes as a complex, tedious, and time-consuming task, but for him, it was as simple as breathing. But was creating and moving the black sand really the same way? The winter seasonal gazed at the black sand in his palm. He gently felt the grains touching his skin, rubbing them with his thumb absently. As his friend waited for something to happen, the grains were rough in texture, but not like the sand on the beach. Instead, it was soft, like hair. The color of the sand was almost jet black, but had a grayish tone and a hint of gold to it. While nightmare and dream sand are different in nature, and they are on the same level in terms of wielding the sand. It was almost as if the faceless man from his dreams was right behind him, speaking to him as a teacher would to their students. A wielder must never lose sight of themselves, nor their purpose, as doing so can have horrible results. Man's tone suddenly turned sad, and as Jack closed his eyes, he could see the backs of the two children as they watched the man move the black sand. "Oz, that wasn't your fault. The feelings were controlling you. But that does not excuse the fact that I had harmed so many. I'd lost myself, my purpose, for a very long time," the man said to the boy. "But you are not lost now," the girl said. "No," the man said, his voice filling with love, relief, and hope. "I am not lost. Not anymore, and neither will you." The man looked at the two children as the sand traveled to the boy's palm. "Here, now you try." Jack could sense the boy's puzzlement and uncertainty. "Go on," the man coaxed. Suddenly, Jack's eyes opened as he heard a whisper coming from the leaves. "Remember what he taught you, little one. You control the sand. It does not control you. Find your center, clear your mind, and remember." Jack moved his other palm over the sand. What about the man, the kids, and the woman? Deep in his soul, he knew they had once been a family that was now apart and hurt. "I want to help them. I want to help everyone." He remembered their smiles, their laughter, their joy. The sand moved along with Jack's hand, turning first into a snowball and then snowflake. Ice and frost magic swirled around the sand, infusing with it. The sand sparkled brightly before dispersing and returning to night. The magic-infused sand brightened her dark tone, giving it a slightly light blue tint where a snowflake frost design rested on her body. Jack and Baby Tooth gazed at each other as they inspected a massive snowflake on Night's hip, which connected to smaller frost designs across her body. "Oh, I didn't mean to do that." Night inspected the new designs on her body. The previous designs Jackson had given her had long since disappeared shortly after his death, but these marks were permanent. She could feel it changing her, much like how it changed her master. I like it, she said. I am part of winter now. She neighed as her sparkly white and black tail moved from side to side. Jack smiled as the north wind picked him up from where he had been sitting. What else can I do? Shadow Go Seek is the game. Find me if you can, master. Jack's joyous laughter could be heard across the castle as he and Baby Two flew from one dark shadow to another, a bit exhilarating, walking through a shadow for the first time. Then, after the initial shock passed, the duo floated within an abyss of fluid darkness that whispered in a tongue that was as old as Father Time. Yet, he understood it perfectly. He shivered as one of the shadows brushed against his arm. The coldness traveling up and down his arm was surprising for a winter spirit. Welcome, young ones, a shadow whispered from within the darkness. Lady Night has just left this realm, it said, but she is not far. You can catch her in the east wing, third floor to the left. Chirp. Thank you, Mr. Shadow. Just as the winter seasonal and the fairy were about to leave the realm of shadows, they felt a vibrant vibration. The wispy shadow was laughing. They returned their gaze to the ancient shadow. Take nothing of it. It has been such a long time since we had lively visitors. Baby Tooth tilted her head in confusion, asking, why? Ever since the war, Lord Pitchener rarely talks to us anymore. The feelings may have changed his appearance and how others perceive him, but they could not corrupt his heart. His love will always remain the same. What happened? There had been many tragedies over the centuries. The execution of his people had only been the start. He could not handle this failure, despite knowing they have not moved on to Death's realm, said the shadow. But in the realm of the in-between, they await their chance to heal the injured soul of their brave and honorable general and lord. The shadows moved in unison, giving the impression that they were sad. They are here in this realm, aren't they? Yes, this realm is the bridge between the living and the dead, it enlightened before Jack spoke up again. Where is he? The question came out before he could stop himself. Far away from us, the shadows' voices echoed as one. In a place where no dreams exist, a shadow of an elderly woman said, only pain. This shadow sounded young, like a child no older than 7, and endless grief. A group of female shadows said brokenly, the loss of a child is a pain that can break anyone, another shadow added. But he couldn't pinpoint the origin of this one. But, the ancient shadow added, maybe you can help him. Baby Tooth, who had been sobbing silently on his shoulder, perked up at this. How? His chest felt less tight at this prospect of helping an injured soul of a lost warrior. The spirit that the shadows called Lord Pitchener seemed lifeless as he lay in a bed that was far too big for him. His complexion was an unhealthy shade of gray as sweat covered his brow. They would have thought he was dead for a split second if it wasn't for his chest moving with every breath he took. Baby Tooth rested on the man's chest. After pulling up the blanket under his chin, the man continued to lie motionless on the bed. The fairy looked at him, uncertain what to do. The man was clearly not well. He was so still, so void of hope and joy. A tightness filled his chest as snowdrops whispered the events of the past couple of hours. Lord Pitchener, consumed with grief, unknowingly tried to take his own life. Jack closed his eyes as he thought. The castle was silent as the residents slept in their respective rooms. The only movement that caused any sort of alarm was the gentle snores of the guard outside and the harsh winds brewing outside. He opened his eyes and gazed at the man once more. Something about him tugged at his heart. Had he known this man before? He was uncertain. However, this did not stop him from placing a cold hand on his forehead, allowing his instincts to guide him. It must be hard, he whispered, losing someone you love over and over again. I won't say I understand how that must feel, but I imagine it's like falling from the highest tree and crashing into a pile of logs that Mother Sprite just finished cutting. He smiled at the memory. Flora had been so flustered as she fussed over the minor scratches he had received from the fall during one of their lessons. It may seem hard to continue on without them, but you must not give up. His hand glowed with a soft, bluish magic. You have so many people that love you, that miss you. His voice cracked with emotion. His chest tightened even more with something he couldn't recognize. You can't give up. Do you realize how much you are loved? Your people have not left you. They want to help you. They want to comfort you. Jack rested his forehead against the other and whispered so softly that Baby Tooth couldn't hear him. You are not a monster, Cause. You never were. You are brave and kind, and I love you so much. He paused, unsure where that came from, but continued on before he could process what he said. But you must be stronger than those who seek to tear you down, because if you don't, me and Flea will replace all your things with flowers and lock you in a room with Mom. Jack pulled back then, slightly surprised by the tears and the words that had just spilled from between his lips. Wait, what? Where did that come from? Baby Tooth fluttered to his shoulder, noticing the tears. She attempted to wipe them away with her wing. I'm okay. He smiled at her, pushing his confusion away for now. Let's go, before night starts looking for us. Before leaving, Jack created a snowflake in hopes of cooling down the general's heated flesh long after they had gone. Unknown to the duo, more blue magic was infused with his snowflake, and as it melted, the magic landed on the boogeyman's closed eyelids, finally bringing him out of his feverish coma. I'm sorry. The Nightmare King rested his arm over his eyes as emotions flowed through him. The shame he felt overweighed the sweet words his self-consciousness had been trying to remind him of. He could hear the words of the people he had failed to protect. None of this was your fault, General. You did all you can, but you must move on. Please, let us help you. Young Jackson is not gone. Jackson. Pitch let out a long sigh as he wiped away the tears. All good things must come to an end. He knew that better than anyone. He had spent lifetimes watching many children and adults perish at the hands of diseases, natural causes, and even by their own kind. He had even taken away lives long ago. But Jackson's death had broken him in more ways than he would like to admit. He wouldn't want this. He would want me to continue living for him. The Nightmare King sat up then, his hands folded in his lap. I must do better. Ignoring the aches that were coursing throughout his body, he rose to his feet. Jackson, I'm sorry. I will move forward, just as you wanted. A smile returned to his features as he walked towards the door. I will not let you down. Jackson may be gone physically, but he would always be with him in spirit. That he was sure of.